Thanks for tuning in to one of my BumperCam videos. So today's a bit of a special day. I have to look at a very old, long abandoned mining village or quarrying village in North Wales called Rhosydd. And this particular road goes all the way up into the mountains and the village is at the other end of it. But this road ends here, well, the public right-of-way ends here. So this is why all these cars are parked here, because they've gone off hiking at this point. Beyond this point it's just a footpath unless you've got the right permissions and access that I've managed to wangle. I'm going to show you me opening the gate there, but from this point on it's not a nice tarmac road, it's more of an old sort of plant track really. It kind of gets worse and worse as we go higher and higher into the mountains. So we start pretty steep. I know this section of the track really well because as well as Rhosydd at the far end, it also goes to a number of other slate mines, including Carmarthen, which is actually just up this first section on the right. It's a mine I know very well because I work in it from time to time. Actually on the left hand side, not that you can really see it here, is another mine called Rhosydd, which is another very interesting place. But this track, that the section we're on now, is just crawling up the steep mountainside, following the course of the river there on the left. You can just see. But just here we're just passing a nice waterfall with a bit of a plunge pool underneath it. We can't see it from the road, and these people are looking at it. And it doesn't have a very nice history, that pool. It was a place where the farmers used to drown the weak dogs many years ago, just to keep the strong ones. And higher up, it's just coming to a flat bit now, and this flat bit actually had a number of mill buildings on. And not actually that long ago they were demolished. Now it's just a flat expanse. Excuse me. But we're going to ignore all this. We're going up into the high mountains that's in the distance there. I'm just trying to avoid the puddles a little bit because I don't want to get water splashed on the lens, because I've obviously got a camera strapped to the front of my car. You're probably wondering why I'm going up there. Well, actually, I was really hoping to make a video at some point about the history of Rhosydd and the people that work there. But it's going to involve a number of trips going up and down with like a decent video camera, just getting lots of nice sections of footage that I can then narrate to later. And this is one of those trips. I may even put a few clips at the end of this BumperCam, which is really just a case of putting an action cam on the front of my car just to record the journey really, because it is quite an interesting section of road. It's very, very rarely driven. It's really more just used as a footpath now. Just as we crest this hill here, you see we're at the lake level here, and there's actually a junction. Normally I'll go right here, like kind of straight on, but we're going to go left over this ford onto a section of track that is rarely accessed. There's a family up there looking at the old ruins. It's a row of terraced houses actually that used to belong to Carmarthen, and they barracked there during the week. But we're taking the old road to Rhosydd, and then there's another mine down here too called Conglog that we're going to pass on the way. Here's our first gate on this section of track. Just going to skip right past this so you don't have to watch me open it. And back off again. Now this section of road actually follows the side of the lake, and it hasn't always been a road actually. It used to be a tramway called the Conglog tramway. It was a 2-foot gauge horse-drawn tramway for pulling slates down to the village below, where it joined the Festiniog railway. And from there the slates went to the port of Porthmadog, and then on to the markets around the world. But most of the tracks have gone now. It's now more of a sort of a gravelly single lane track. It's only ever really used in vehicle terms, occasionally by the farmers who have livestock up here, and it's used as like a grazing land really. But long ago, this valley, of course, was very, very busy with the slate mines. Good 100 years ago or so, it would have been very different. Then lots of people lived here, and they're all long gone now, of course. Nobody lives in the valley anymore, and all the mines are closed. Although technically, Carmarthen's a working mine. The company I work for takes people on adventure trips through it, which is all very cool. But no such thing with Rhosydd, where we're going today. And we've got a bit of time on the way, so I'll just tell you a little bit about it. I'm not going to go into huge detail, because I do want to do a separate video all about Rhosydd, but it starts very early on, 1830 it was, when a quarryman who actually worked in one of the other mines that was working at the time was hiking way up in the mountains here and discovered an outcrop of pretty decent looking slate up on the tops, and well, there's another gate. I'm not going to make you sit through me opening this, so we'll just forward on. There we go. And yeah, look at it, and the slate actually looked pretty decent, but the problem was it was so high up and remote that it was never really going to be very easy to work, at least not without an awful lot of investment. But for the next 20 years or so, there was a lot of moonlighting going on, really. People just coming up, walking all the way up there, and it's a heck of a way. And obviously this track didn't exist then, it was all just marshland, so they'd have to traipse all the way up there, spend the day in high mountain weather, trying to hack out some slates and dress them into squares and bringing them back on the backpack, which must have been a pretty meagre way to earn a living, you know, for the kind of money that would probably buy a loaf of bread and a few potatoes at the end of the day. Now just as we're passing, this slate fence here is quite distinctive and quite unusual to this area. You can see it's just slabs of thin slate driven into the ground and a binding wire holding them together. But I think they're really cute. You know, they're quite well renowned around here. Actually, just as we're passing, you see on the left there's a remains of a chapel. It's missing its roof, all the slates were nicked off it some years ago, but it was still holding services in the 1960s. And that chapel actually belongs to Rhosydd, the quarry or the mine that we're on our way to now. Obviously the people that work there were very religious, but the quarry was not just a place of worship. The chapel was not just a place of worship, it was a school as well and a community centre, so it was quite an important building. It's a shame to see it in a bit of a mess now. But from the 1830s, when it was just very piecemeal, things got a bit more serious about 1850, when they decided that, well, the slate up there was good enough that maybe it warranted some serious investment. So they actually established who the actual landowner was, because up to that point it wasn't even really very clear who even owned that land. It could have been one of several big estates in the area, but it was established in court, and a lease was taken out, and some investors came from actually mostly London. I believe there were some investors from Bath as well. I'm not quite sure. They invested a ton of money in here and actually put this tramway in, which led up to Rhosydd and established a very small village in the early 1850s. I'll just quickly change the memory card there. Excuse me guys, coming past. So from 1850 things got quite serious. They actually built some barracks up there and some mill buildings, put in some proper transport via the tramway, and things began to improve considerably up there. The mine got bigger and bigger, but there was a big change about 1870 when that company wound down, because they'd actually invested too much money in it. the layout and all the plant in there and the mills and all the buildings had all been so expensive that they couldn't sustain their own debt, despite the fact that the mine was very productive and producing some very good slates. There's a very bumpy section of track here. I don't think it really ever comes out very well on the camera, but this is a pretty steep section of road coming up. We're actually just passing the Conglog quarry, but you can't really see it from the roadside. So a new company took over about 1872, I think it was. I'd have to check my facts. And that's heralded a time of spectacular progress, really, until there was a very large fall about 1900, which really damaged productivity in the mine itself. But it did struggle on. In fact, it only properly fully closed in 1930. They gave up at that point, not because the mine had run out of slate, but more the markets had dried up and they were running out of places to sell it, really. The whole market for slate at that time was squeezing quite hard. All the mines and quarries were really feeding it at that point. And these more remote ones were some of the harder hit ones, because they were always going to have higher costs associated with running them. So it did eventually close in 1930, but the owners actually kept 2 men working up here, just as caretakers, keeping the pumps going, etc., for 18 years, all the time hoping that conditions would improve in the market and they could reopen the mine. But in 1948 they decided it was never going to happen, and they finally pulled the plug, and that was the end of it. But many men worked here. There was 170 chambers here, and there's a little village on site we'll be getting to in just a moment, once we've passed this big wheel pit on the right. It takes a bit of gas to get up this really steep section here. Many of the buildings up here now are in such a ruined state. There's only really a little bit of wall left here and there. Some of the buildings are more complete, but nothing's got a roof on anymore. And just as we crest the top here, you can see some of them now. It's pretty desolate up here. It's quite high. The weather up here is absolutely savage in the winter. In fact, this precise spot has the highest annual rainfall of anywhere in Europe. So it's a pretty wild place, so today's not so bad, although the clouds are really starting to come down now. I just pull up here. There's a dog. Some guy walking. He doesn't look very impressed that a Land Rover's just turned up. Oh well, that's tough, I'm afraid. So I'll just park up here, and I'm going to spend the next so long with my camera. I'm just trying to get some atmospheric shots for my future video. Bear with me a moment just while I park up. I'm going to change cameras. So the clouds come down now, which is really what I wanted, because it's really showing this place in a very atmospheric way. As you can see, it's quite a desolate, quite lonely place, really. Quite atmospheric. Even though it's in the middle of August, it still feels quite a cold, windswept place. Of course, it's savage here in the winter. All that remains of this little village now are just these ruins. But there are many stories to be told here that I hope to do in that future video. Well, thanks for watching.